So I'm Joy Vernon, and I'm the organizer for the Greater Seattle Tarot Meetup. And today we're doing the psychic clairs as they relate both to tarot and astrology. And this is something that I started kind of putting together and figuring out a few years ago. Kind of had some notes to myself hidden away in various corners of the cloud and my computer, my old computer, my new computer, and we're just kind of floating every once in a while to come across that, going, oh yeah, that was kind of interesting. I should pursue that sometime. So so at any rate, I got really moved finally to share it and to work with it and to see what other people thought of what I had done. And so that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to talk about the clairs, what they are, how they came about, how the correspondence, of course, as always, the correspondence is a little complex. So I'm going to explain how the correspondences came about. And then we'll go into each clair along with its tarot and astrology correspondence, and then we've got some other information that was maybe an exercise if we have time. I'm not sure if we'll have time. Okay, the correspondence of the psychic clairs to tarot and astrology. And this is for the Greater Seattle Tarot Meetup, and today is Saturday, October 15th, and it is not 9:30 anymore. It's probably, what time is it? Oh, it's about 9:50. Goodness. Okay. So here's our agenda. 1, what are the clairs? We'll go over that just to introduce the idea. And then we'll look at the physical sense functions and their link to tarot and astrology. And from the physical sense functions, that's how we're going to jump to the psychic clairs. Then we'll examine the 12 clairs with their tarot and astrology correspondences. We're going to look at psychic blocks, which I have some theories about that as well. And then if we have time left, we will do a practice. But I also have a number of practice suggestions. So even if we don't have time in this class today, there will be the suggestions for you to look at. So first of all, what are the clairs? So here's a story to start us off with, and this is a few years ago. Are you clairvoyant? My client asked me from the small screen of my phone. No, clairsentient and claircognizant, I replied. I was doing a Zoom reading circa 2019. You always say things that I'm thinking about, so I thought you were clairvoyant. Oh, okay, that's claircognizance, to know what somebody else is thinking. Clear knowing. Clairvoyance is seeing. And a lot of people will identify, here we go. A lot of people will identify psychic and clairvoyant as being synonymous. And clairvoyance really is not the same as psychic. Clairvoyant is just a subset. It's one psychic sense that people can have. So that's a little bit, I don't know, maybe a pet peeve. People just randomly say to me, are you clairvoyant? And I'll say no. And I know they probably meant, am I psychic? And I would have said no to that too. But a lot of times I don't want to go through it. So here we have the psychic senses or clairs. So some of the clairs match the 5 physical senses. Clairvoyance is clear sight. Clairaudience is clear hearing. Clairalience is clear smell. Clairgustance, clear taste. Clairtangence, clear touch. So those are your 5 basic physical senses. And then the psychic version of each one of those. So seeing, the physical sense of seeing we all know what that is. You know, see an object, you know, you can touch it. You can, if it's making a noise, you can hear it. Now, the clairs are those experiences, but on the astral level. So they're not physical. There's nothing physical to be seen, but you see something. There's nothing physical to be heard. There's no actual noise or vibration that you can hear, and yet you're hearing something. Same with smell, taste, and touch. All of these things have an astral level that they work at. So, but there's clairs that go beyond the five senses. So we already have an example that the clairs are not simply a one-to-one correspondence with the five senses. So there's claircognizance, which is clear knowing, and there's clairsentience, which is clear sensing or feeling. And that's not feeling as in touching, that's feeling as in your emotions. How do you feel? Or just a sense, like a sense within yourself of, this feels good, this feels bad, this feels right, this feels wrong, this feels comfortable, this feels uncomfortable. That sense is what we're talking about. And I'll go into all of these in more detail later. But wait, what about the other psychic abilities? You certainly hear people talking about channeling, about being a medium. They recognize people. Some people immediately know people's past lives. There's empaths. Lots of people do dream work and have very powerful experiences with their dreams. And what others might there be, just in terms of psychic abilities? Anybody want to pop anything into the chat there, or just unmute yourself and speak up? What other psychic abilities are you familiar with?
I'm familiar with channeling and empath.
Okay, good. Any others? Yeah.
I'm definitely familiar with dreaming and kind of the predictive quality of dreams.
Okay, good. And we've got some chat.
Yeah, I popped a couple in there, Joy.
Okay, yeah.
And I just realized that I sometimes get smells.
Okay.
And one of the smells that the first time I realized that I was, and I guess olfactory, clairolfaction or something like that, is
clairalience is the main title for that one.
Is it? Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
would smell vanilla and chocolate chips, and I realized that that was my paternal grandmother visiting, because she used to bake chocolate chip cookies for me
Oh, wow.
when I was at her house. And when that really strong odor of vanilla and chocolate baking, when there's nothing else going on in the house, makes me think that she's visiting.
I love it. That's beautiful. Okay, cool. Okay, a lot of people, I get smells and thought there was something wrong with my nose. That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely, there was one, I have clairalience is one of mine. That is definitely a weird one. And there was one, when I was working at Isis Books in Denver, one of the other readers, I had just stepped out into the hallway when somebody was leaving her room, and I was just like, oh my God, that guy smells so bad. And I was just, you don't think you don't know the difference if it's a psychic sense or a physical. I thought he stunk. I thought he had BO. And so later I'm talking to that psychic. I'm like, oh my God, that guy was so smelly. And she was like, what are you talking about? And then she just started laughing. She's like, no, he didn't have BO. You're smelling all the stuff that was going on with him.
Oh my.
Yeah. And so somebody's like, what's the difference between channeling and mediumship? Great question. And I don't know the answer, but I'm going to give you my philosophy when we get there. So good question. Empathy, big time. Somebody else says same with me. Okay, cool. Good. Okay. So here we go. The clairs are hard to define. And I just want to say this one up front. By definition, they're beyond the strict limits of the body and its everyday senses, thoughts, and feelings. So just the very fact that they're not within our one everyday realm of awareness, and two, within our everyday ability to define or quantify, that makes them automatically challenging to pin down. So, and one thing that I have noticed as I try to learn more about these is that if you search online for definitions of the clairs, you'll find a wide variety of interpretations. And some are really downright wrong. It's like somebody doesn't have them, but they want to write an article. They maybe read somebody else's article. They don't like actually talk to people that are actually psychic. And they end up giving very distorted senses of what the clairs are all about. And a lot of times they simply misunderstand and then explain it wrong because they didn't understand it right to begin with. So you want to try to find information from people who are speaking from their own experience, that do identify or have a lived experience of being psychic or having psychic senses, if you want to find out more information. But above and beyond that, even those who live with psychic senses every day still might jumble different experiences together and therefore have a distorted view of what a single sense uniquely provides. I came into psychics, kind of talking about psychic senses. I had heard of them and I'd had psychic experiences going way back. Well, throughout adulthood. I don't identify any of my childhood experiences as psychic, but maybe I just need to think harder about them. To me, I know a lot of people that have very clear psychic experiences from childhood, and I don't remember anything like that. But from adulthood, I do remember distinct things. But I didn't really start thinking about it until really I was working at ISIS Books and suddenly had all these, like an instant framework of colleagues and others that I was working with every day and that did have specific psychic senses. So that's when I really started learning more about it and started kind of sorting through what my experiences were and putting some labels on it so that I could understand better what I did above and beyond, just reading the cards, which is what I'd always done. So yeah, I think most people have already posted this, but if you didn't yet get a chance, what clairs are strongest for you? If you haven't already let me know, go ahead and post one or two that you think might be yours, or as many as you feel are yours in the chat. So now we're going to take a step back and start to look at how the framework that I used to associate the psychic senses with the tarot cards and astrology. And I had to do that via the correspondences that already existed for the physical senses. So now we're going to talk about the physical sense functions as they are linked to tarot and astrology. So of course, so much comes from Paul Foster Case, who is an amazing tarot author, psychic, a tarot person, and he's the one that founded the BOTA. And in his book, The Tarot, A Key to the Wisdom of the Ages, Paul Foster Case equates certain cards to what he calls the sense functions. So these include the 5 senses, but they go on to incorporate others such as thought, speech, wrath, mirth, and others. And so as you're reading through the book, suddenly you'll get to a card and it'll say, oh, the sense function for this card is such and such. You're like, what? How do you get that? Why? That doesn't even make sense. Well, guess what? Well, first, here's the list of them before we get any further. So here's the list, the 12 sense functions and their related tarot cards. And this is straight from Paul Foster Case's book, The Tarot. And so sight is the Emperor, hearing is the Hierophant, smell is the Lovers, speech is the Chariot, taste is Strength, touch the Hermit, work or action, which he says is essentially karma, that matches to the Justice card. Motion is the Death card. Wrath, which wrath of course means anger. He says that the underlying word for it usually is more like a quivering or a vibration. That's the Temperance card. Mirth is the Devil. Meditation, or specifically conception, like the start of an idea, the germination of ideas, that is the Star. And sleep is the Moon. So Paul Foster Case's functions derive from the Sefer Yetzirah. And this is probably not a surprise to anybody that's familiar with me or with Paul Foster Case, because we always love going back to the Sefer Yetzirah. And so it is important to recognize that Paul Foster Case was working with a translation by Newt Stenring. And you can, I know I have a copy of that translation on my Kindle. There is a preface in it by Arthur Edward Waite of the Waite-Smith Tarot. And so that's important to know, because I did check, I think, maybe three other sources. And the sources do tend to vary, partly maybe in how the Hebrew is translated, but some seem to place some of the senses to different letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And so it's important to recognize that Paul Foster Case was working with this translation. And so I actually was able to copy this table out of that book. So we have this table is from this edition right here, that I believe is the edition Paul Foster Case was working with. And so this is the 12 simple letters. And Hebrew, there's 22 Hebrew letters. They divide into 3 mother letters, 7 double letters, and 12 simple letters. And so we're only going to be working with the simple letters here. And those are across the top here: Hey, Vav, Zion, Ket, Tet, Yod, Lamed, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Tzadi, and the one that's hidden behind me is Kov. That didn't help. Okay. Sorry. Anyway, and so below those, you don't need to know the letters. Anyway, and so below that, you can see that each of those simple letters is then assigned to what's called their foundation: sight, hearing, smell, speech, eating. We're using taste for that. One translation I looked at said the desire for food, the desire for food. Desire, I thought, was an interesting, not just taste, but the desire for food. Eating is how he's got it here. Coition, of course, is the same root as coitus, so that is sex, but generally it's translated or utilized just as touch, without all of the sexual baggage that goes along with that. Although I think it is, again, probably fairly relevant. Work, this is the one that was work or action or karma. Movement or motion, wrath, mirth, meditation, and sleep. And they also then match up to the astrological signs, the 12 months of the year, and some and some places on the body. I don't even know what a rennet bag is. I think that's in animals. I don't know what it is in people. So I'm not sure about that one. Okay, so that's where Paul Foster Case got the idea of the equation of the letters with these sense functions. So remember, and if you did see me on Chris's podcast, then you remember me going into great detail about this. Remember, there are 22 letters to the Hebrew alphabet, and there are 22 major arcana tarot cards. The cards map onto the letters in order. And so starting, and this is where this was the whole thing. Where does the Fool go? Is he first? Is he penultimate? Is he last? Starting with the Fool in the first position. So when the Fool is Aleph, that's what the Golden Dawn ended up using. That's what Paul Foster Case is using. If you put the Fool in as Aleph and then lay out the rest of the cards in order after the Fool, then all the correspondences in the Sefer Yetzirah, because the Sefer Yetzirah identifies a number of correspondences for every letter in the Hebrew alphabet, then all those correspondences from the Sefer Yetzirah that match all the letters in the Hebrew alphabet now can be assigned to tarot cards. So in terms of astrology, the 3 mother letters are the elements, the double letters are the planets, and the single letters are the signs. Another side note, just in case you immediately want to go and look it up, which probably some of you are doing, the double letters, the Golden Dawn did rearrange those and their associations to the planets. And I have some theories on why they might have done that, but at any rate, that you're not gonna see that looking exactly the way it does in this chart. Okay, so that is all that information. I will I forgot to PDF this, but I can post it in the comments on the meetup event page, so you have access to that. Okay. So now we have the Sefer Yetzirah, we have the Hebrew letters, we have their sense functions, and we have the astrology. And so this chart right here is basically exactly what the table we were just looking at says. So here we add the tarot card. And so the result is a compendium of senses, signs, and cards. And so there are the Hebrew letters, the simple letters, the 12 simple letters, their function, the astrology, and then the cards, again, the cards being, so the Fool is 1. If the Fool is the first, the Fool is 0, obviously. When the Fool is the first card of the sequence, the Emperor becomes the 5th card. He is the 5th letter. The Hierophant becomes the 6th card. Vav is the 6th letter. Lovers becomes the 7th card. Zion is the 7th letter. Just 1-to-1 correspondence. Okay, so now the physical sense functions to the psychic clairs. So now clearly the basic clairs easily match the sense functions, like clairvoyance is seeing, clairaudience is healing. But I had to incorporate additional extrasensory abilities to reach 12 psychic senses. There's 7 basic senses that I learn as clair something: clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairalience, clairgustance, clairtangence, claircognizance, and clairsentience. Those are the 7 that are always, that I always hear about, that are called clairs, that are pretty common. But we have to get up to 12. But we already saw that there are other psychic abilities. So that's what I did. So I took the sense functions here, and I made the obvious ones. Sight is clairvoyance, hearing is clairaudience, smell is clairalience, speech. I thought, well, the sense function of speech would be channeling, because you're speaking from spirit, you're speaking through a psychic ability. Taste is gustance, that, and touch, clairtangents. Those are just the obvious ones. Work or karma. I thought because it was karma, that should match up with past lives. And I think that works pretty well for the Justice card or the idea of Libra, because a lot of times that's about bringing balance to the past life experience, is about bringing balance to a past life event. And so that makes pretty good sense to me. Motion for death, that was an odd one. Paul Foster Case talks about motion, passing away, change, walking away, some things like that. I put it with empathy because to be honest, I did a lot of this many years ago, and maybe it was just the one that was left over. I'm not entirely sure why I put it there. I think I'm going to leave it for now and come back to it later. Wrath or vibration, that to me was the clairsentience, because clairsentience is the feeling. In fact, that even if you say I've got a vibe about something, that to me is clairsentience. And just the fact that there's a quivering or vibration that matches that, I'm like, yeah, that makes good sense to me. The devil is mirth. And there wasn't one for that, but I have a good story about that, which will probably make this make more sense. But I made one up. I made Clair Laetitia, which is clear gladness, clear joyousness, clear happiness, mirth. It matches with the devil in Capricorn, interestingly. So we will learn a little bit more about that. Meditation, the germination of ideas, conception, that is claircognizance, which is thought, and the one that Newt Stenring translates as meditation, some of the other texts I do believe translate as thought. So claircognizance, for that, it's the star in Aquarius. And then sleep is, of course, dreams. That one's really easy, and that's the moon or Pisces. So that's how I got from the physical sense functions to the psychic clairs. And then because the physical sense functions already had a card in astrology attached, then the clairs automatically had a card in astrology attached. Okay, Clair Laetitia, yeah, I made that one up. Laetitia means gladness, happiness, joyfulness, and I just thought it matched well with the sense function of mirth. Okay, so the 12 clairs with tarot and astrology correspondences, one by one. Let's go through them. Okay, so here are the 12 psychic senses, just to recap: clairvoyance, clear sight, clairaudience, clear hearing, clairalience, smell, channeling, speaking from spirit. Clairgustance is taste. Clairtangents is touch. The psychic practice that you do with the ability clairtangents is called psychometry, and that's when you hold somebody's keys or something like that and get psychic messages from that. Clairtangents or psychometry. Past lives, empathy, clairsentience, which is the clear feeling or sensing. Clair Laetitia, which is clear joyousness or gladness. Claircognizance, clear knowing, and dreams. So one by one, clairvoyance. Clairvoyance means to receive information via psychic sight. It is seeing visions, images, colors, or patterns with the mind's eye. It's probably the most widely known of the clairs, but I don't think it's the most common, because I know a lot of people that do have some psychic senses that they are in touch with, and they don't have clairvoyance. One of the things about clairvoyance is, well, and I think I might talk about this a little bit later, some of them, clairvoyance and clairaudience in particular, tend to be interruptive of your normal thought process or your normal communication process. And they tend to be a little bit more showy, because if, you know, if I suddenly see something, I know I'm not talking about that thing. It just pops up in my vision. And so then I can't ask you about it. So I had again, a colleague of mine who is clairvoyant, was working with a client. She saw a plane, but the thing is, that doesn't help any. She still didn't know what that plane represented. And so it's not like she can say, oh, I see your son, he's a pilot. I mean, she could try to do something like that, but she has no idea what it means. So she's like, I'm seeing a plane. And that's kind of a nice way to do it, is just say, I see a plane. Does that mean anything to you? And if they're like, no, I don't know anything about planes, then it probably is symbolic, like it's swift movement or swift advancement. But they might be like, oh my gosh, you know, so-and-so was a pilot, or oh my gosh, he loved building models, you know, or something like that. And so the clair is clairvoyance. The sense function is sight. In astrology, it's Aries. And the tarot card is the Emperor. And I thought that that's a Arthur Rackham illustration of Brunhilde from the Wagner Ring Cycle. And I thought she looked very much like the Emperor there. Plus, she's clearly looking off into the distance. And I thought that was a nice illustration for this. And clairaudience. Clairaudience is hearing on the psychic level. Typically, people might hear words from guides, spirits, those who have passed over, those who are not physically present. Also, this includes hearing bells, knocks, sounds of nature, animal sounds, or any kind of noise that, again, is not physically present and that the others can't hear. Like clairvoyance, this is one of the more well-known psychic gifts. And like I discussed above, it's more impressive. And so this actually happened to me once. I was talking with yet another psychic. This was at the Metaphysical Research Society in Denver back in the old days. And this guy suddenly is like, oh, my guides are telling me that you make beautiful candles. Well, I do make candles, and I think they're pretty nice. Thank you, guys, for saying that. That was really sweet. Of course, this guy had no idea. He didn't really know me. So that's reasonably impressive. So the clair there is clairaudience. The sense function is hearing. The astrology is Taurus, and the tarot is Hierophant. Clairalience, that's psychic smell. The common example is smelling pipe smoke or perfume. Cheryl had a really good one that she smells chocolate chips and vanilla and knows that her I don't remember who it was, a grandmother maybe, was present.
Yeah, my grandmother, that was an absolute amazing baker.
Awesome. That's a great example. So I had a really interesting experience with this early on. I was still in my 20s, and I had gone over to visit a friend who had set up like she had used copper tubing to create a pyramid under which she was going to charge some gem elixirs. And if you've ever made a gem elixir, it's just a gemstone in a container. You put some distilled water over it and charge it up. Frequently with moonlight or sunlight, you can charge it with psychic energy. She was using this copper pyramid to charge it. So she handed me, and then of course, once you've got the whole elixir, you can decant it into smaller bottles and all of that. So then she handed me a little amber bottle and just said, what do you think? And I didn't know what to do. I'm like, the first time somebody had handed me a gem elixir, and I took the lid off and smelled it. I don't know why I did. Maybe I was thinking of essential oils or something. And the first one I smelled like oranges. Well, most people would say, it probably was like carnelian or something. Well, interestingly, just a week or so before, I had a friend visiting from out of town, and we had dipped candles, and we used essential oils in with the wax to create scent for the candles. She had put orange essential oil in the blue candles. It was driving me nuts. It was wrong. Orange and blue are opposites. They do not go together. And so it had really irritated me for some reason. I kind of tried to make a couple suggestions as to another scent that she could use, but she's like, no, I want to use orange. And I'm like, huh. And so and I had blue candles with, because we dipped a whole bunch. I had blue candles with orange scent for a long time after that. And so, but I had a really strong association of orange at that time, the smell of orange with the color blue. And so I opened this up, I smelled orange, and I said, was this a blue stone like lapis lazuli? She said, yeah, it is. I was like, huh. And so then I smelled the other one, and it smelled like roses. And I said, is this like rose quartz or something? And she's like, yeah. And so it's like, apparently I didn't even know it was a psychic sense. I just thought it was weird. So clairalience, and that is smell. The astrology is Gemini, and the tarot card is the Lovers. Channeling. So channeling is speaking from spirit, and there are different kinds of channeling, and the channeler can be either what we call in the driver's seat or not. And so when they're not in the driver's seat, it's called trance channeling. And that's when, like, the person who's doing it has no longer any or very little conscious control. They're kind of step to the side and let whatever spirit or deity or God form or whatever come in and speak through them. And that one's called trance channeling. And of course, there's all variations. The degree to which any given person can actually step aside in order to let the trance happen, you can step aside to all varying degrees, and it's just going to be different for each person. So I think the trance channeling, like really being able to totally step aside and let another spirit or entity come in and speak through you, I think that one's probably less common. But the experience of channeling while in the driver's seat is more common. A lot of people can do that and find that they suddenly become very it's hard for me to, it's one that I do. I would like to do it better. So this is one I'm working on developing. It's very hard to see when I'm actually speaking from spirit and when I just get excited about something or all of a sudden am very motivated to speak. I have Mercury in Pisces, and so my normal speaking can be a little bit meandering, a little bit stream of consciousness, not very linear, but sometimes I get really kind of motivated to speak, and I become much more clearer and linear in how I speak, and a little bit more just animated. And when I'm just simply excited because it's an interesting topic to me, or when I'm actually speaking from spirit, really hard to say, to be honest. However, this is the thing that happens to me a lot, is many psychics end up using words or phrases spontaneously that end up having relevance to the querent. This channeled information can be mixed in with other psychic and non-psychic communication. So again, it's really hard to tell when you're doing it. The thing that clued me in is people just kept saying over and over again, oh my gosh, my mother used to always say that to me. Oh my gosh, we were just talking about that in the car on the way over here. Oh my gosh, I was just thinking that, like the person in the story at the beginning of the talk today. And I just heard that enough, and like, apparently that is like some weird psychic ability I have, is to like say things that people are thinking about or talking about or something like that. But using people's exact words, and that when they're like, my mom used to say that, my uncle used to say that, when I hear things like that, that's when I think it's probably channeling. Clear. So the clair is channeling, the sense function is speech, astrology is Cancer, and the tarot card is the Chariot. So I will say something at this point, as we've got a few to get through still. One of the things that I started noticing is that I started realizing that I was channeling more than I thought I was. And I was really interested in that as like, people were starting to say, oh, you channeled that, like different things where I just think I wasn't trying to do anything. I didn't realize I was doing anything. People would say it back to me. I'm like, okay, I think that it is something useful. And I think it would be beneficial to me. I also notice I've had a throat chakra block that goes back to childhood. And when I hear myself talk, a lot of times I sound like I'm choking. And so I think that the block has to do with the channeling, and that opening that up is going to open up the channeling ability. We're going to talk about blocks a little bit later on too. So the astrology for channeling is Cancer. I have Cancer rising and moon in Cancer, and the tarot card is a Chariot. The Chariot is my birth card. I'm a 25-7 or a 34-7, depending on how you add up the numbers. But at any rate, 16-7 are my tarot birth cards. And I thought about trying to include that in this talk, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do everything. But if you already know your birth cards, I'd be really interested to find out if the psychic senses that are either one, already strong ones for you, or two, that you seem to have the most interest in, if they match either something important in your astrology chart, or if they match your tarot birth cards. Clairgustance. This is like the physical sense of taste. People who have the experience of clairgustance might have the sensation of a flavor that is not actually present. I do think this one is unusual because I don't have any personal experiences with it, and none of my colleagues have told me about this one. But again, if you've had experiences, put it in the chat and let me know. So clairgustance, the sense function is taste. This one matches to Leo, which interestingly, is she opening the mouth? Is she closing the mouth? Why the mouth? Oh, maybe because it's tasting something. Interesting. Tarot card strength. Clairtangence. Receiving psychic information via touch. The practice of this is called psychometry. Typically, a psychic with this talent will ask to hold a personal item of their client, like a keys, a ring, or something they carry with them all the time. The sense in the Sefer Yetzirah is coition, which has that sexual connotation. I chose for the illustration Sleeping Beauty because the symbolism of the spindle and the pricking of the finger is very sexual in nature, but also it is about the touch of something. The spinning fiber into yarn is a very, very tactile experience. And the psychic sense could easily fit into the story. it would be interesting to see, and I just read the books. I haven't watched like a movie. I don't think I watched a movie of this that I can think of anyway. When she touches the spindle, I'd be really curious to see if she gets a jolt, like, oh, maybe this is bad. Maybe I shouldn't do this, and that fits in again with the symbolism of the story, which has to do with sexual awakening. And yet at the same time really matches the whole psychic stuff. So I think that's a favorite story. It's really fascinating to me. So the clair tangents, the sense function is touch. Astrology is Virgo, which is indeed the Virgin. And the tarot card is the Hermit. Past lives. Some psychics easily see a person's past lives. Usually in this kind of case, the past life story has similarities to the present life, explaining it or putting it in context. Most people that like to work with past lives do find that sense of context is extremely helpful to them. I don't work with past lives. To me, I'm like, it's complicated enough to figure out your current life right now without having to look at your past lives. But again, some people really have a way of putting it into a context, and they work well with it. When someone does ask me about past lives, I will pull cards on it. I did have a really interesting experience where I pulled cards on somebody's past life and told this whole story about him and meeting this woman, and they fell in love and got married, and they had 2 children. And in the spread, the children clearly died. And I did not want to, I'm like, I don't want to create that. I don't know what I'm talking about. Past lives aren't real. I'm not going to tell him that his kids died. That's horrible. And so I said, and then everybody lived happily ever after. I think I said something insanely stupid. And he's like, wow, that is exactly like my current life. Except my girlfriend got pregnant twice and lost the child each time. I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay. And now I still don't know. Did I read his past life or did I read his present life? I don't know. But at any rate, that was, I think I stopped doing past life stuff after that. I'm like, okay, that was way too clear. Empathy. This is one I definitely have very strongly. And this is the first one I figured out. I figured this one out in college. But empathy is to experience the emotional or physical state of another. You feel it in your body as if you were them. And this one is very confusing because your mood matches the mood of people around you. Your physical pains can match the physical pains of people around you. When I first realized I had it, I was in college. I was sitting in the theater, waiting for, I don't know, waiting for a rehearsal or waiting for a work crew. The friend that showed up, it was probably waiting for a rehearsal because she was an actor. So my friend shows up and she sits down next to me, and I wasn't having any particular experience. I was just sitting there waiting, staring off into space, waiting. My friend comes in and sits down next to me, and all of a sudden I'm insanely depressed. And I'm just like, oh, I feel so bad. My life is horrible. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, it wasn't 2 minutes ago. Like, what the, and I looked at her, I'm like, how are you feeling? She's like, oh, I'm so depressed. It's like, interesting. So that's how I discovered that the emotions I felt were not always mine. And that was a really good thing to realize. People who say that they pick up other people's stuff when they do healing sessions or something like that are usually empathic. Just as a comment on that, you're not actually taking on the other person's pain, even though it does feel real to you. You are a mirror reflecting their emotional, mental, and physical image, and you can release it pretty easily. One of the clues, if you're having an empathic experience, like one healer I know would pick up other people's stuff pretty hard. She told a really interesting story about doing a healing session on somebody had scheduled a doctor's appointment for some kind of pain. My colleague worked on them. The person left, whatever. My colleague ended up having horrible pain after this. She went to the doctor and the doctor couldn't release the pain. The doctor couldn't, like, everything they tried, all the things that normally would have worked, none of it worked. She still had the pain. She called the client up and said, "Hey, how are you doing? Did you end up going to the doctor? What'd they say?" And the client was like, "No, there was nothing wrong. I never even went. I was felt totally fine after." Like the next day or something. I canceled the appointment. And so she had certainly picked up the other person's thing, but the fact that her doctor, chiropractor, whatever it was, couldn't fix it tells me that it's not in her body. It is, again, in her psychic field. And so it needs to be released via the psychic field. And so the clair here is empathy. The sense function is motion. The astrology is Scorpio, and the tarot card is death. Clairsentience. So clairsentience is psychic feeling. It can be a sensation in the body of comfort or discomfort, or it can include more specific impressions. It's not to be confused with clairtangents or psychometry, which are about actual touch. This is the feeling that you get, the sense that you have within yourself. It's following your gut. A psychic sense is something that provides information that is not available to the ordinary five senses. Our five physical senses allow us to gather so much information in such a short time that sometimes it seems like we're having a psychic experience, but in reality, we're simply processing physical experiences very quickly. The psychic clairs come into play when we arrive at information that we cannot gather just from those main five senses. And so clairsentience is, like other clairs, is relying on data that is imperceptible to the physical senses. Clairsentience, its sense function, it comes from wrath or vibration. Its astrology is Sagittarius, and the tarot card is Temperance. I think one of the easiest, most concise ways of talking about clairsentience is having a feeling of yes or no. And a lot of people will try to develop that as a quick way to get an answer to something. And if you think about anything, think about something you know, like think about a food that you like and think about eating it, and you get like, oh, good. You get a good feeling inside. And then think about something that you hate, and it's just like, ugh, repulsive. And, oh, I don't want to eat that. Please don't make me. Those are the feelings. And you can use, that's clairsentience, when you feel an affinity towards something, or an apathy, or disgust or something towards something. And so you can use clairsentience that way to feel into any decision you have to make. What if I do it? How does that make me feel? What if I don't do it? How does that make me feel? And as you refine this and practice this over and over, you start getting clearer and clearer senses of that. And again, the fact that wrath or vibration, and this to me is a vibe, it's very much a vibe, that fits really nicely. Okay. Claire Letitia, this is the one I made up. Ability to feel or share pleasure and delight in all things, whether pleasant or difficult. So, and all my colleagues are always like, well, it's not a good reading if nobody cries. And I'm like, people hardly ever cry at my readings. I do have to have tissues, but I don't go through them very quickly. And people are always laughing, and I'm always laughing. And it doesn't matter how bad it gets, we're laughing about things. And I finally realized that I have this. This is a psychic thing that I do. No matter, and I used to laugh at inappropriate times. This is probably the one that goes back to childhood. I really can laugh at inappropriate times. Somebody like, oh, my grandmother died. Oh, that's great. I'll just start laughing. And yeah, so it's really embarrassing psychic sense to have. But one thing that really came through really strongly at one point, and that tied in all the different experiences together for me, especially the tarot card and sense function, is that I had a client and we were doing a reading. He was a little bit weird, but I have weird clients, that's okay. And the devil came up and he's like, when's the last time you invoked Beelzebub? It's just like, oh God. And so I had been thinking about the devil card because it had come up, we were talking about it. I immediately switched the devil card to the lover's card because they're similar, as you know, in terms of the layout and positioning of things, the composition. I switched the lover's card in my mind. He started pounding on my table and chanting the Beelzebub. And I ended the reading pretty quickly and got rid of him and went up to the front to tell them, like, this guy goes on the no read list. He was way too weird, but I couldn't stop laughing. And I laughed all day. The entire time I was trying to explain to them what had happened, I laughed all through it. And finally I said, you know what, you know how some people, there's different, like Satan worshipers, there's all different forms of that. There's Luciferians, there's Satan worshipers. I don't know anything about Beelzebub, but apparently I do know that some people that work with that energy are just trying to get an energy of enjoyment and pleasure from it. And that's what I got, is all I could do was laugh, and I was in a great mood. And so apparently, either through my own protections or through whatever he really did was trying to invoke, I don't know, I just got the good stuff out of it. I just got mirth, and mirth is the devil card. And that's when I started being like, maybe there's something to this. But the clair Letitia, sense function is mirth, astrology is Capricorn, and tarot is the devil. Obviously, most Capricorns are not known for being joyous, but nevertheless, this is a really nice kind of side effect. And the Capricorns I know actually are pretty funny. So maybe they don't laugh, but they make other people laugh. Claircognizance. When you just know something, you're experiencing claircognizance. A little bird told me, and so I have a picture with a woman with a little bird. Unlike the clear psychic experiences of clairaudience or clairvoyance, experiences of claircognizance seem fortuitous but not psychic. Again, and this is the thing with a lot of the clairs, a lot of the psychic senses, is that you don't realize you're doing them. So back when I used to temp in between theater gigs, a company had hired me to do some word processing. My first day on the job, I met the boss. He mentioned that he had just returned from a hunting trip. I knew nothing about hunting, but wanted to appear interested. I cast around in my mind for something to say, and suddenly the idea of a dog came to me. Now, was that a psychic connection, or was I just thinking of hunting that I'd seen on TV and, oh yeah, there's usually a dog there? I mean, who knows? I to this day, I still think, well, obviously, every time you look at hunting scenes, there's dogs. So that's why I asked about it. So I kind of like didn't know what to say about the dog. So I just kind of was like, when you hunt, do you take dogs with you? The boss's eyes widened and he said, that's interesting that you mentioned that. And then he told me a really unique story about a dog, and I'm not going to go into it, but there was a very interesting specific story about a dog that was relevant to that unique one hunting trip. So very, very interesting experience. So that made me think maybe I wasn't just thinking of movies or TV shows. Maybe I actually had tuned in to some kind of psychic sense. Clair is claircognizance. The sense function is meditation or thought. The astrology is Aquarius, and the tarot is the star. And the last one is dreams. And these are dreams that come to pass or that relate useful information. Some people with the psychic sense also often will solve problems in their sleep. I am not good with dream work, never have been. I do not solve problems in my sleep. I can solve them in the shower. That should be a clair showering. I think everyone's got that one. Showering and brushing your teeth are always really good. But yeah, the dream thing doesn't work for me. So I didn't really, I love dreaming. I have interesting dreams. But I've never, every time I've tried to use it intentionally, it hasn't been helpful to me. So I'll just leave it at that. And I didn't write very much due to the fact that I don't have good stories about it. So the clair is dreaming, the sense function is sleep, the astrology is Pisces, and tarot is the moon. So does your clair match your chart or your tarot birth cards if you happen to know them? So post that in the chat for me. And I'm going to stop sharing and see where we're at and what people have said here.
I have a lot of correspondence, actually. The
Okay.
Cancer to channeling. Cancer is my rising, obviously. Pisces on dreams. That's really significant. And then the empathy is Scorpio, and that's in the first degree of, first degree of Scorpio is my Jupiter, which rules all of Sagittarius. And I always have the clairsentience and the clear gut feeling. So almost all of the ones that I have completely match my astrology chart.
Okay, cool. Good. Okay, Claire Chronos for timing. Excellent. Good one. I'm going to read the chat now. What kind of clairs does a healer have when they perform psychic surgery? That, I think energy work goes into a whole different field, but they could be using any of the clairs to determine what needs to be healed. And again, everybody's unique. In Reiki, we're taught to feel for hibiki, which are sensations in the hands. And so that's going to be your, that's going to be the sensations in the hands. Is that clear touch or clear sentience? See, they're also complicated. I think that's going to be the clear sentience because it's a feeling in a sense, and I'm not like touching them and knowing something about them or touching their keys or whatever. I'm feeling for psychic energy, but that also might just be different. Yeah, these are complicated, and I still don't feel like I can explain any of them, even when I do them. Somebody's like, okay, I'm clairaudience. This is how I find things like my keys. I hear where they are. Okay, good. That's good. I've had that one too. I wake up with words in my head sometimes. Interesting. I also get words from trees or plants. Nice. Okay, cool. I've had mock heart attacks when close family members have experienced real heart attacks. Yep, that empathy thing is powerful. Had to put shields up to stop that from happening. Perchance are young children natural with empathy? Yeah, absolutely, definitely. A young child will cry only because the other child in the room is crying. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And people that are empathic a lot of times get a bad rap because they end up, and luckily this didn't happen to me. I tended to just keep my mouth shut about everything. That was the benefit of the throat chakra block. But I knew somebody else that was constantly, first of all, they can be, when you're a hypochondriac, they can always be sick. And then I did know somebody that would always get whatever somebody else had, she'd always get that sickness. And people didn't think of her as empathic, and she didn't ever think of it that way. They thought of her as being trying to one up everybody, and they thought of it very negatively. And she didn't, of course, I didn't know any of this at the time, so it's not like I could have helped. But she probably was empathically picking up on these other people and didn't know how to process it. And so she was constantly sick, and because she was naturally kind of a dramatic person, she would tend to upstage the people, the real sick people. So yeah, and that was not an answer to the question, but yet another tangent from Mercury and Pisces. I guess it was a decent response. Okay, I've done that as a nurse when I don't shield properly. Yeah, that empathy thing is weird. Which clairs would create poltergeist? Poltergeist is going to be just a totally different, the spirit stuff and ghosts. And that's why I forgot to talk about mediumship, but that's why I didn't end up using mediumship. Mediumship is not the way I see it. I am not a medium. I am not a psychic medium. The way I see it is that mediumship, there's the trance channeling where the medium can have a spirit enter them and speak through them. That's channeling. Mediumship in general, though, for most people is just seeing other people's past relatives, seeing spirits, connecting with angels or divine beings or something like that, and communicating with them. That's what mediumship is to me. It's more about having the conversation and being able to connect with those spirits, and then having a clear conversation where they can get information. And so it didn't fit unless it goes to motion, and then I lose empathy, which might be okay. Empathy, I think sometimes that empathy is not useful. And so I could go into that, but I don't know what to talk about. But anyway, the clairs, I don't think it's a clair that creates a poltergeist. I think that is excess psychic energy in the area, and or spirits. The spirits themselves can be the excess psychic energy, but excess emotional energy can also cause poltergeist type of effects. And I don't think it is a psychic ability, because anybody can see that. You don't have to be psychic to see poltergeist activity. I feel no in my legs or butt, and yes, tingles in my arms and hands. That's awesome. That's really nice when you've got something clear like that. My list is growing. Add in the Claire Letitia, always a weird sense of humor and mostly inappropriate. Excellent. Okay, good. How about daydream? That would go into meditation. Daydreaming and meditation will fit together. So in the meditation and thought go with claircognizance. Daydreaming is a great way to get into the psychic realm. I'm a Scorpio, and empathy is my thing. Not that I'm aware of. Is somebody okay? I have a very janky chart, but overall, I'm Aquarius and do have the claircognizance. Okay. Can you put the correspondences chart back up? Really good question. Let me see if I can do that. I'm going to get through the rest of these though. I'm a Gemini, and I know smells all the time. I've never had a psychic experience. I have experienced clairaudience and claircognizance quite a bit, and clairsentience to a lesser degree. Pisces, I think I've turned off my dreams because I don't remember until I'm almost awake. We'll have to explore that. Sagittarius, and have all the clairs except dream, unless daydream is considered. No, I don't think daydream is dream. I think daydream is thought. It depends on how deep the daydream is. See how these things just all kind of merge together. It says 11 new messages. So I don't know that I can go through all of these. Panic disorder started to calm down when I discovered my that's interesting. We're going to talk about some of that in a bit. Okay, I'm super interested to read all of those, but I need to go back to sharing my screen so that I can pull that chart up, because I think people probably do want to see it again. So let me see if I can go back. Here we go. Physical sense functions to the psychic clairs. Let me remove myself from here. If you want to screenshot that or take a picture with your phone, you can. Psychic blocks, here we are. Okay. Yay, I get all excited. Psychic blocks, yay. When we can't access our psychic gifts. And I love, it's a favorite thing of mine to do is pick out the illustrations that I use with these. And I just love this. These two women with these treasure chests and these monsters around them, kind of dragon-like something, some kind of spiny frog thing over here. I don't know. Crazy. I thought that was perfect for psychic blocks. So the Little Mermaid story. A mermaid has a beautiful singing voice. She sees a prince and falls in love. He hears her singing and falls in love, but they don't meet. She trades her voice for legs. They cause her great pain. She walks on land to find the prince. She can't say anything to him. He leaves. She dies. Why do we sacrifice our gifts? That is the question of the day. Cassandra. Boy grants girl the gift of prophecy in return for sexual favors. Girl declines to favor him. Boy curses girl so that her prophecies are never believed. Why are our gifts curses? Astrology and blocks. Interestingly, I have Saturn in Aries, and Aries would be clairvoyance, and Mars in Taurus. Taurus would be clairaudience. Those are two that I have pretty much zero experience with. I've never identified with either of these psychic senses. And I've got to say that I will give a caveat that over the many, many years of doing energy work and ritual work and meditation and card reading and personal growth and spiritual ritual work and all of this kind of stuff, I'm starting to be able to be more in touch with a lot more of these psychic abilities. But I thought it was really interesting that the two difficult planets, Saturn and Mars, also matched up with two clairs that I had pretty much zero kind of access to. So I'm curious for you guys, if you find that difficult placements in your chart, and that can be Saturn or Mars, it can be North Node or Chiron, any other challenges. If you're an astrologer, go ahead and use your knowledge of your chart to identify what challenges you might have and whether they might be blocking a certain psychic sense. And that could be, even though I have Saturn in Aries, maybe if I had Sun in Aries, which I do have Sun in Aries, but maybe if I had Saturn square to my Sun in Aries, I might still have a block in Aries. So, you know, if you're an astrologer, use all your abilities to figure this one out. I'm not sure exactly how it works. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this and why I'm inviting people to share in the comments so that we can all figure this out a little bit better. So again, look at your chart, your astrological chart, note your difficult placements, specifically the position of Saturn and the position of Mars, and maybe others if you know a little bit more about astrology. And are the signs where you have Saturn and where you have Mars, do those signs match clairs that you do not have or do not identify with or have a block around? That is the question. So again, do your difficult chart placements match your psychic blocks? Post in the chat and let me know. And if we were doing an all-day workshop, I would spend lots of time and go around with each person and look at their chart with them and help them out on this. But this is a meetup, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, the treasure and the monsters. Monsters guard our greatest treasures. In the mystery tradition, this monster is called the guardian of the threshold or the dweller on the threshold. Confronting the guardian gives us access to the treasure. So it doesn't surprise me one bit to know that the throat block, I definitely have my very first driver's license when I was 16 or 17. It wasn't on my 16th birthday, so I might have been 17 by the time I finally got around to getting it. But my driver's license picture at that time, I always had my head down, and I just thought that I had trouble like being confident or looking people in the eye. I don't know what I thought, but I always had my head down. And plus the whole driver's license, I am an Aries. I get really angry about just about everything with the debilitated Mars. And I was a very angry child. And the whole driver's license like red tape thing was just like, go here, do this, fill out this, sign this, you know, all of this stuff. The whole thing was making me very angry and very frustrated. And I finally got to the picture, and then they were saying stupid things. I don't remember what she was saying, but I got really angry. On top of already being frustrated, I got really angry at the woman that was taking my picture. And my photo at age 17, I have my chin down, and the actual photo had this great big ball of light right at my throat. And that's my throat chakra block, because if I wasn't holding that in, that could have been a lot of obscenities, and who knows, and maybe even some psychic. You could totally psychically curse somebody, like say really mean things that actually hit home because you're psychic. That could be really mean. Luckily, I have the throat chakra block and don't do that to people. I don't think. God, I hope I don't do that to people. Okay, so that's an example of a block. In the block, of course, and I always knew I had this block, and it was only, again, much more recently, and I still I thought I had released it at one point, but I definitely have it again. You know, I think it's guarding my greatest treasure, I think, which is my ability to channel, which I do believe is something I could yet develop. And so confronting the guardian of the threshold, this is a exercise that my teacher taught me, and it's very easy to do. It is a little unsettling. If you are unsettled extremely easily, you might not want to do this. So I'll just leave it at that. So confronting the guardian of the threshold. A classic exercise for confronting the guardian of the threshold. You'll need a mirror. A wall mirror is great, a lit candle, and a dark room. This is best done at night so that the room is quite dark. Turn out the lights, and then from the place that you're going to sit in order to see yourself in the mirror, you're going to position the candle behind you and slightly off to the side. The light should not be direct. So you're not going to see the candle in the mirror. You're just going to have some light from behind and to the side. It puts you mostly in silhouette and mostly in shadow. Sit in front of the mirror so that you can see at least your head and shoulders, is usually good enough. Gaze into, I don't think when I finally did this, I did not do it when my teacher told me about it. I did it years later. and because he said it can be weird, and I didn't want to do it. But years later I finally wanted to do it. So sit in front of the mirror so you can see basically head and shoulders. Again, it'll be kind of silhouetted from the candle. Gaze into the mirror, particularly around the edges of your reflection. After a few minutes, you'll abruptly see an intimidating psychic shape. And this is going to be different. What you see is going to be different for every person. I have taught this exercise before, and people have reported back that it did work pretty much just like this for them. Frequently, for most people, this is true for me. Seeing that shape is very strange, and you're immediately just jolted out of the experience. If you're not, though, I would follow your intuition and instincts on about how to proceed. The idea is that if you're able to stay with the guardian, it will fade away, and like a psychic vision or something will open up. I think there's a variation on this that just is like, if you do this on such and such a night, you'll see the man you're going to marry or some such thing like that. I think there's like a folklore version of this. So the exercise, if you are jolted out quickly, you can repeat this exercise until you find that you can easily move back past the guardian. I don't think I ever repeated it. I think I did it the one time. I was like, whoa, that was weird, and kind of stopped. But I think it can be pretty useful, and getting in touch with those monsters, it is a very, very useful thing to do for your own psychic health, mental health, and for spiritual growth. Again, if you are upset easily, if you're very, very sensitive, if you have any kind of mental health history, you might not want to do this. You might not want to do this, period. You might want to do it only under the instruction of an experienced teacher at the very least, or preferably if you have mental health issues, under the guidance of a mental health practitioner. It's no fun to upset your psychic energy and have to deal with that on top of everything else. So be careful if mental health is a problem for you. Okay, opening your psychic senses. I just have a couple minutes. I only have a few slides left, so I'm going to bulldoze through the last of these and then go to questions and things like that. How to get in touch with your clairs. Opening your gifts. I took this from a blog post that I wrote back in 2019. I did not include it as always, I was doing this slideshow up until the last minute. Anyway, I didn't have time to put together a resources page. Divination, doing your tarot card readings helps you open your psychic abilities. The more you work with your cards, the better your psychic abilities get. Part of it is looking for answers beyond ourselves. And that's the thing, is anything that we do to connect with whatever is beyond the physical realm, anything we do to connect with that, and the more often we do it, the better our psychic abilities become. Transformation, self-transformation, seeking our own betterment through healing, knowledge, self-understanding, rising to challenges. Again, reaching beyond our limitations. Anything that takes us beyond helps us open up our gifts. Meditation, obviously, that's the first and foremost and the best thing to do for just about anything, meditation. Invocation, if you want to increase your psychic abilities, it's a great practice to invoke your holy guardian angel, your guides, invoke specific angels or deities or ancestors, or whatever you work with, whatever psychic entities you work with, invoke them and ask them for help. And that's going to give you great That'll give you great results. Conversation. And I included journaling in the blog post that I wrote about this. I talked a lot about journaling and just kind of opening up a dialogue in your head. And so journaling is a really good way to open up those psychic senses by, again, kind of having a conversation in your head. But taking that one step further, Paul Foster Case describes the Temperance card as the Holy Guardian Angel. He says that to connect with the Holy Guardian Angel, we simply ask a question. Then sit silently, and answer will rise to the surface. This answer, he says, is from the Holy Guardian Angel, the HGA. The HGA only responds. You must reach out by asking the question. It's not going to contact you like this is one of the things I kind of like about this tradition, is that you have to seek your psychic connection. Other traditions teach that psychic abilities just kind of suddenly appear out of nowhere. And how we learn things a lot of times is how they happen for us. And so if you're taught that you don't have to open it till you're ready and you ask for it, what a relief. So I don't know, something to think about. The Holy Guardian Angel only responds, you must reach out by asking the question. But when you ask, the Holy Guardian Angel will always reply. I had this happen so much. I had no idea it was a psychic thing. I had no idea I was connecting with my Holy Guardian Angel. I used to do this all the time, and it was so useful to me. Initiation. Reiki attunements in particular tend to open up the psychic abilities, but so do any kind of spiritual initiations, group initiations into spiritual traditions or mystery schools or whatever. Blessings from a priest or spiritual adept, all those things can raise our vibration and help us connect with the again, the non-corporeal world, with the astral world, which puts us in touch. That's where the psychic senses are, and they open us up to that. Advanced methods. Last time when we did tarot meditations, we learned the entering a card meditation. There is also a blog post on that. Again, I'll put these links that I keep alluding to. I'll put those after we're done here today. I'll put those in the meetup event description so that you can go back and find out more information on these things. But practice the entering a card meditation, working with the card. Choose the card that correlates to the psychic sense you wish to work with. This is a great way of connecting deeper with that sense. The entering a card meditation usually has you step into the card and connect with a guide. You can then ask that guide how to open up this psychic sense that you want to work with, etc. Practice Kabbalistic path working. Again, this is a self-initiation method. And the first path work, which is path 32, the path of Tav, connects us from the physical world to the astral realm. And so again, just doing the first path of a path working process does help open up your psychic abilities. And this is something you can do on your own if you are not having any mental health issues and psychically, emotionally, physically healthy, emotionally balanced, and all that kind of stuff. If you're not yet working with simpler meditations and things to get you more into a balanced place is going to be useful prior to doing this kind of work. Or again, this is something that can be done on your own. So also if you're having problems with things, working with a teacher or something like that, or again, are ways of starting to slowly and in a more controlled manner open things up so that you can heal. Path working itself must be done in a specific order. This is really important. A lot of people don't realize this. Working from the bottom of the tree and going in order up to the higher levels, always maintaining balance. However, once you've accomplished the entire path working process, which can take a while, but it is a self-initiation thing. Again, it's something you can do on your own, which is really nice. Then you can work with individual paths to reinforce and strengthen those psychic senses. So the path for the Chariot, for instance, the one that I have been started working with just a little bit, is the path that goes from Sephira 3 Bina down to 5 Gavora, and it's kind of high up on the tree. So the fact that I've already done all the work is important. If I was working like with dreams, that's Pisces. That's from Sephira 10 to Sephira 7. It's not the first one that you work with. It's about the 1, 2, 3, the fourth one that you work with, but it's down towards the bottom, so it's an easier one to connect with. But I can, and once you do a lot more work, going back and doing path working can be a great way of really opening up that psychic center and really saying, okay, this is what I need to do, and this is how I want to get this done. I did not include a slide for this. I kind of thought of it as I was making my jasmine tea. I was like, oh, there are lots of really easy ways of connecting with, helping to open your psychic abilities. You can use stones and herbs and essential oils. And there are a lot of really good ones that are good for opening up psychic abilities, and they're much gentler than some of the more intense. Easy meditations are also very gentle and good to do. But using stones and herbs and essential oils are all much easier, gentler ways of getting into this opening up of the psychic abilities. Thank you for attending the Psychic Clairs. There's my website, joyvernon.com. You can go there for information, classes, or to schedule a reading. My blog, completelyjoyous.com. Remember to follow all the great events we have here at the Greater Seattle Tarot Meetup. I don't think there's anything on the calendar right now, but we always meet on the third Saturday of the month for general interest tarot and astrology. Many thanks and gratitude. If you do feel moved to make any kind of donation, you can just use PayPal and send it to joy@joyvernon.com.
Oh, that was fantastic, Joy. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Joy.
Great introduction. Thank you.
It was amazing. I had no idea. I'm learning more and more about myself in the last 2 years.
Awesome. Any questions or thoughts or
Just a real quick one, Joy. My chart is interestingly void of planetary placements in almost four of the signs, and I did post those, and it kind of explains the difficulties I have or the missing clairs that are affiliated with those areas.
oh, interesting.
But that was interesting, yeah.
Anybody, so some people already identified as psychic or having any some clairs or whatever. Does anybody have anything like, I certainly cannot be comprehensive, plus I don't have most of these. And I tried to share the experiences that I did have, and I really was trying to hoping to, I don't identify as psychic, I don't call myself that. But I was also trying to, at the same time, to open up the idea that you might be doing psychic work without realizing it. Does anybody with more experience want to share any insight or knowledge that they have around this?
Well, if nobody else wants to go, I'll go ahead. When I was young, I used to see and hear things that when I told my parents, I was told that, well, I was just imagining things and I was crazy. But I've actually, when I was young, I used to have clairaudience and also clairvoyance, and some of it was around the religious training that I had when I was a kid, and I would hear people talking, but their mouths weren't moving.
Wow.
And my mother, I used to repeat things to my mother that she didn't remember saying, but she knew she had thought. And
Oh, wow.
and
My
ultimately,
son does that to me all the time as well. So I know exactly what you're saying, because he'll repeat things to me that I'm just thinking about, and he'll verbalize them.
Wow.
And it used to get me in trouble because because I could hear it so clearly in my head. I thought somebody had said it. And then I would repeat it to somebody else, like a member of the family, and I'd get a spanking because I had told a lie because they hadn't said it, but they ultimately thought it.
Wow. Yeah. Why are we punished for our gifts?
I have a question about the confronting the guardian of the threshold. Is so obviously I'm assuming to do the blessing do a protection around our area. Is that's very important, or
I was not taught to do that for that. I was taught how to do that, but I was not taught to do that for that particular thing. This is a powerful technique, but it's very easy. And like I said, it's also taught in folk work. And so I don't know that it's quite as strong as actually doing like you're not doing an invocation of anything or an evocation of anything.
Okay.
It's much more a psychic experience as opposed to working with an actual external entity. This is part of you. I should have said that the guardian is part of you.
Okay.
And so that's why you don't really have to protect against it.
Okay, so I don't have to do not so much of a serious major saging major, the white light, and then the closing. I'm always scared to death with Ouija boards or things like that that invokes other spirits besides my guides. That's the only one that I've allowed to channel through me. So I don't know exactly how to do a Ouija board, and I don't want to, so I just kind of keep myself. So yeah, so I don't have to worry about close, I guess,
I would. Yeah, again, especially if you say that you are pretty sensitive and you have discomfort with Ouija boards, go ahead and do some saging and some white light beforehand and afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt. And if nothing happens, then you know that you're overprotecting, right?
Right.
But
okay.
it is something within you. The guardian of the threshold is within you naturally.
Okay, so if I do the protection, it should still work theoretically,
so.
because it is part of me that I'm pulling out to observe. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly. Yeah, for sure. Any other thoughts or questions or comments or anything?
I've never thought to do the correspondence astrologically with the psychic clairs. So I think that's a fantastic way to look at things. And it's really opened up a whole level of kind of thought process and everything on and I'd be curious to know kind of if you pose this to different groups or anything, if it does correlate, because that's really an interesting, I've never thought to do it that way. So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
It certainly explained a lot of things to me that I didn't quite understand before. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Susanna too. Some other people are nodding. Cool.